You are now listening to the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Episode 8. Honestly speaking, the numbers are growing every episode as far as listeners, and so I'm just extremely appreciative of everybody who's tuning in and kind of seeing this growing Vinegar Syndrome community. This is Punk Vacation, a Vinegar Syndrome, an unofficial Vinegar Syndrome podcast. As y'all know, if you've listened before, my whole purpose for this show is finding the joy in unfettered creativity, which I think really kind of is something I connect with Vinegar Syndrome. I want to make this a podcast dedicated to bringing awareness and context to movies from any budget, anywhere around the world, and during any time in history. I've been a subscriber since Black Friday of 2021, and through a different podcast, They Live by Film, I've interviewed a lot of the different OCN partner labels and members of Vinegar Syndrome, and just slowly been watching them become an industry powerhouse, and then slow, and then quick as it goes. And I just wanted to track along and use this podcast to see kind of how high they can go. So I'm extremely honored and excited today. There's a content creator and a YouTuber and film lover named Sam Dunkley who's joined. Sam, thank you so much for making this time.
Of course, yeah, I'm very happy to be here. You put out on social media for volunteers for interest to be on the podcast, and I DM'd you, and you were receptive to my agreement to be on the show. So yeah, very excited to talk about Vinegar Syndrome today. I'm a big fan of the podcast so far. As you said, this is episode 8, and I think all 8 episodes have been really good. It's a really good start to a podcast which probably should have had a podcast for this label like years ago.
Right?
At this point, it's crazy that it's taken this long for someone to start one up, but it's been a great ride so far, and yeah, very excited to be here today.
Thank you, Sam. And we're going to get into the movies. So today's topic, we're going to go over the movies that came out in October. As y'all know, it always takes a while to get them. So it's a little bit weird 6 weeks after October 1st to be recording this episode, but it's just the way that it goes when they ship out the films and when people actually get them in. So everybody should be should have the October movies at home now and want to use this as a guide, especially leading into the Black Friday sale, which is coming up in about 10 days now or so. Before we get into all of that, Sam, what do you do online? Like you have a few different, you have a kind of a main personality, I should say, online on YouTube and other channels. So tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so like everyone and their dog, sort of during the pandemic, I needed an outlet to talk about my main passion, which is film. So I started a YouTube channel called Filmbloggersam, in which I talked about physical media and films in general. And I sporadically release things on there. It's not like a regular upload of things because I have a full-time job and a family, and I actually want to watch films as well. So I got to know a lot of people in the community, like Ryan from Disconnected and various amounts of other people. And so yeah, I do that, and I have a podcast called Let's Watch 2, which is like a film pairing podcast. And I've just recently started a blog on my website for Blu-ray reviews. So that's also on Let's Watch 2 under the Blu-ray reviews section. And I like to guest on other people's channels and podcasts, which I've done quite a number of times over like, the last few years. And yeah, so that's me.
There's a really good episode recently on the Radiance podcast that you did. I want to point people to that. Make sure they go listen to it.
Yeah, we spoke about the recent announcements that are coming out in January or February time. The recent slate, anyway.
Yeah.
And then we also talked about a Vault. It was like a part announcement, part Vault episode. So we talked about a previous catalog title, The Elegant Beast, and we had a really sort of thoughtful, in-depth conversation about that film, which I think went really well. And yeah, got on really well with Adam. So hopefully I can, guest on that podcast again in the new year. So that was a really good time. So
Yeah, and so it was good. It was fun to listen to as well. Sam, you before we started recording, you mentioned that Vinegar Syndrome is a label that you own, made possibly the most of.
mhm.
Um, and so what's the journey that got you to Vinegar Syndrome? Like, were you always kind of a fan of French cinema? Like what's your journey been like to get you to this point?
I feel like I'm very similar to you because I've heard you say a few times your entry point to a lot of these types of, you know, um, weird, oddball genre films and stuff that Vinegar Syndrome tend to release that aren't like, the bigger titles that they've been putting out in more recent years is through art house cinema. So when I first started collecting boutique Blu-rays and stuff like that, it was Criterion discs. Um, I think the first ever disc I bought I knew was a boutique disc at the time was Gilda.
Oh, cool.
Um, yeah, so it was the Criterion discs didn't come over to the UK for quite a long time. Um, so like the UK and was a lot of behind on that, and I wasn't importing things at that time. Now I import anything and everything to feed my addiction, as it were.
Yep.
And then through years and years of just exposure to various different types of cinema and watching all the classics and all the things that are regarded by many people as like masterpieces and stuff across different genres and territories around the world, I started to really want to push my sort of comfort level and push my understanding of more sort of low budget and just fringe cinema, as you mentioned. So I saw various different people on the internet, mainly on YouTube, talking about all these labels like Severin and Vinegar Syndrome, and I just went on the website and I just saw all these things that I'd never heard of,
Right, right.
and that excited me. And you get I like on the Vinegar Syndrome site because you get to look through stills of what the film looks like and things like that in like really good quality, and
Yeah.
they're usually pretty good at writing copy to
Yep.
sort of sell you the film. And I just picked up a few things. I can't remember what year it was I first picked up some stuff. Um, oh, whatever year Blood Games came out, whatever year that came out is when I first
Yeah.
started collecting them, and I haven't looked back since. I'm not a subscriber right now, but I have been like a half year subscriber before, when they've had like the July to December subscription in the summer. I've done that before when I've been able to afford it,
Nice.
and I filled in a lot of the back catalogue. As I said, I'm looking at them right now as we speak because that's just the way I'm facing and the shelving in front of me, and it's a considerable amount of one of my shelving units is just Vinegar Syndrome, and then all the partner labels that are
Yep.
associated with them. And yeah, and I've just been my tastes have leaned more towards the obscure and the weird and wonderful. And as you said, just enjoying that unfettered creativity and just appreciating, what some filmmakers can do with so little, and just being completely enamored with that. I've just been really enjoying the journey, and yeah, I prioritize these sorts of things over more commercially available films that I know, um, you know, maybe get a lot more support. And I just love film preservation and restoration, and I think Vinegar Syndrome are at the forefront of that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I've just slowly over the time just been collecting loads of them and just really enjoying it. And I don't get to talk about them very often because one, they're a US based company, so even like serious collectors in the UK are sort of, if they're interested, they're put off because it's the import cost, and as much as you have to wait for sales a lot of the time. I tend to pick up a lot of stuff brand new because I like to support things up front, and but I do wait for sales for some things. But there's not a lot of people in the UK to talk about the vinegar syndrome stuff too much that I'm like friendly with. So yeah, I think you're similar, aren't you? You went through the route of art house.
Yeah, no, you nailed it. I mean, I think it's always interesting to hear from people that had a similar background because, I think what happened to me is because I was told that Kurosawa and Fellini and Antonioni and Bergman and all these people are like good films, right? Then
Hmm.
and I mean, there's a reason they're like that. They're amazing filmmakers. Fellini, even with everything I've seen, he still remains one of my favorite. But like these are amazing filmmakers doing incredible things, and they are on the other end of this. If you go back to this idea of like, kind of, well, untethered creativity, at least of not having a studio just dictating every move, they're at the other end of it, where they're respected and they have distribution and they're at festivals, but they still get to kind of, they're auteurs, right?
Yeah.
And then the thing that I realized very quickly as I started watching some of these with Vinegar Syndrome is that these are also auteurs. They're just not distributed in the same way. But they have this similar vibe to a lot of the art house stuff because they're allowed to go make the movie they want to. And I just love it. I love anybody that can do that. And you get to see some wacky stuff. Like we're going to talk about Ghost Dance here in just a minute. Uh, and Corpse Mania. And there's nothing really that connects these two movies other than this spirit of recklessness and just kind of like fun that you can tell the filmmakers are just doing whatever they want. Um, and I like it. I like it a lot. Actually, it's good we're talking about art house because one of the ones we're going to talk about today is just a straight art house film. It could easily have been put out by Criterion.
Oh
So
yeah, for sure.
yeah, I think we can jump in. I mean, so where do people find you if they want to find you? Do you want people to go find you on Just Watch Two? Do you want people to find you on Film Blogger Sam? Like, where do you want people to
Yeah.
have that entry point?
Yeah, so like film blogger Sam is like my handle on like Instagram and YouTube. So yeah, you can find me by just searching that on Google, really, to be honest. And then my website is letswatch2.com. And I have a website there with which like has links to like my YouTube stuff as well. And then it has a few because I've only been doing it recently, some written reviews for some physical media releases. Yeah, you can find me there.
Oh, I said Just Watch Two. I'm sorry. Let's watch two.com. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great. We'll put the links in the episode anyways.
As the 1880s drew to a close, almost all of the Western tribes shared a crushing sense of hopelessness. And once again, the white man's government wanted to reduce their reservations even further. So, they were ripe for a messiah.
We're talking about murder here, Doctor, two to be exact. And there's nothing supernatural about that.
And that messiah was Waboka. He started preaching a strange mixture of Christianity and the old Indian beliefs called the ghost dance religion. Among other claims, Waboka swore that he had actually visited God in heaven.
You've been under a terrific strain. Out in the desert at night, your mind can turn somersaults, and whatever you see or hear can seem very real.
I'm telling you, he was there.
All right, well, let's get into it. So October is was a huge month for them,
Mm.
just in terms of their mainline releases. They always put out several movies a month, but I think this month was, let's see, what Ghost Dance, two, three, six movies just in their mainline.
Yeah, pretty stacked releases as well. So a lot of bang for your buck for like a bundle for this month for sure.
Yeah, and there's some movies that it's always interesting to me because I wasn't into regional horror or obscure horror in my teens. I when it was still VHS, kind of going to the DVD era, I missed out on stuff like so Title 481 is Ghost Dance, right?
Mhm.
And this is one of the ones that's really interesting to me because this is one that people had on their list of like, oh, I hope this gets a release one day, like a nice Blu-ray release one day. And I'd never heard of it. Did you have any background to this film before seeing it?
Absolutely none. As I've over the years become more versed in like all these obscure films, just by association and being on forums and stuff, you get to hear about various different films and stuff. Even if you haven't seen them,
Right.
you become aware of them. But yeah, even Ghost Dance wasn't something that I'd come across. So when it was announced, I was very intrigued to check it out for sure.
Yeah. And if, a lot of these movies are Hollywood adjacent, this one really is not. The only, the most famous person here is probably the cinematographer who had a pretty long career. His name was Fred Murphy. Had a long career as a cinematographer. But the one thing that I thought was really interesting on the interviews and stuff associated with this disc was that the director and writer aren't even making movies anymore.
Mm.
They're just like businessmen, and they were pulled back in to talk about this movie, and they got to kind of revisit it and have fun revisiting it, which I thought was awesome. So, this is truly like one of those movies that was a time and a place. It was made. It wasn't quite, didn't have the success the filmmakers wanted it to. And for the most part, there's some people that, some actors in here that had smaller gigs and just kind of maybe a working man's career as an actor. But for the most part, this is a very kind of insular, singular release. Um, so let's see, 6,000 units in the, I forgot to check before we were starting how it's selling. So go ahead and while you give your thoughts, I'll check on how well it's selling for them right now, and then I'll find it. But what did you think of it?
I have mixed opinions on this one. I definitely found it interesting and a nice sort of snapshot of a time and place. Um, but let's start off with the beginning of the film. I thought the first like 10 minutes, 15 minutes of this film were really good.
Yeah.
So it starts off with they're digging up like a burial ground site. These like what they just professors in like archaeologists, although I'm
Yeah,
not entirely
yeah,
sure what they are. Yeah, and they uncover this burial ground of what they think is a folklore legend person, and it's the whole beginning 10, 15 minutes of the film. It's like there's no dialogue, and it's mostly, apart from the first bit at the beginning, it's in like nighttime, and there's a lot
yeah,
of not espionage, that's the completely the wrong thing, but like skulking around and secretive stuff going on, and it's
yeah.
very intriguing. And I was very like, where's this going? And the
Uh-huh.
film was sold to me as being sort of like slasher-esque, but obviously with a twist because there's some sort of supernatural element, which is not uncommon for slasher films to have supernatural elements for sure, but incorporating sort of Native American folklore and spiritualism and just possession of some description. Unfortunately, as the film progressed, I found there were some really cool set pieces that I really enjoyed, and I can definitely appreciate that the filmmakers were undeterred to fulfill their vision, even though they were on a budget, and that goes into in the special features that they were kind of restricted in some senses, and they had to sort of almost accept some like first takes with some things
Right.
because they just had to move on because they didn't have time to like reset everything and carry and like get the perfect shot sometimes. But I found the film a bit stale in places, if that's fair to say.
Yeah.
The writing could have been a bit more inspired. I thought the performances were fine, and it looked pretty good. But yeah, something didn't completely connect with me. I'm definitely glad I watched it, and the special features definitely elaborate on things, and there are some interesting characters behind the making of this film, which made me enjoy it a bit more. I love special features when they can do that, when they can
Right.
shine some light on things. But like it didn't completely work for me, but there are elements of it that did work and I did enjoy it. So it wasn't like a wasted time for me, but it's probably not one that I'm going to be watching again with anytime soon, but definitely an interesting, different take on this sort of thing that I feel is quite tasteful. I don't know. It's always a very difficult thing to balance when you have sort of white filmmakers tackling this subject matter when it's not their culture that they're representing. But I feel that's tackled in the special features as well, where the writer and stuff talk about um, how they feel about the subject matter and stuff. But I personally I wasn't offended by any of it. I thought it was done in a good way. But I maybe other people would find it problematic. But yeah, I liked it, but I wouldn't say it was great. But yeah, what did you think of Ghost Dance?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for getting into that. I think there's one quick thing. It looks like it's sold about 3,500 copies so far, so it's out of 6,000, the limited slipcover. So there's still a fair amount left, but it's selling pretty well. I think I'm assuming it's probably selling well on the strength of the bundle, is my guess, as opposed to people necessarily seeking this out individually. But at the same time, the fact that they made 6,000 of these, it must have had a following that they knew about going into this. Um, there's a couple of points I just want to call out before I get into directly how I feel. So the filmmakers were from Arizona,
Hmm.
and that, Arizona, New Mexico, it's kind of, there's areas that are sort of called like the Southwest in America.
Yeah,
And Native American culture is very ingrained in your day to day there. I don't know. I didn't go to school in Arizona, but I imagine that in elementary school, and you probably start to have a greater awareness of tradition and Native American history and stuff in that area than you would in other areas of even in the U.S. There's a lot of people in New Mexico, which is next door. There's a lot of reservations now that have been that are there. In that state, there's a lot of reservations, and in fact, there's one area called Chaco Canyon, which is really cool because it's one of the most untouched um, old worship sites that it's been preserved really well. So it's hard to get to because you have to go, you fly into an airport and then you drive 2.5 hours to get there. Then once you get there, you have to go on a road that hasn't been maintained, and it's like this big ordeal.
yeah,
But when you actually get to Chaco Canyon, it's a little bit of an out of body experience because it's a place where people have been coming all the way from Mexico, which is just south of it. They've been coming up to worship at this one area for thousands of years. And so you can see, like, because it's so well preserved, you can kind of see the society there. And there's some houses that are still preserved and some temples that are there. It's a really cool, very spiritual, interesting area. My point of that is to say that I think when you grow up in the Southwest, you have a natural curiosity and closeness, like proximity to that culture, right?
hmm
To Native American culture. So when these two college age white dudes set out to make a movie about Native American culture, it's not like they were completely without context, even if it wasn't native to them. Um,
sure,
and one thing I did like is that they engaged the local tribes fairly well in the writing of the folklore to make sure that they weren't being too offensive. So
yeah,
they did their appropriate amount of homework. There was one thing that was a little curious where they said that they were asked not to use this the character of Nahala. I don't know if that's who's kind of like the main spiritual baddie here in the film. I don't know that that's exactly the name in from the tribe they were speaking with, but that character that they took, they were asked not to use him, as it was kind of important, I guess. And so, if I remember correctly, and I don't know if you, I hope I'm remembering that correctly, but there was one thing they were asked not to use, and they did it anyways. And that ties into what I really like about the special features was I got the sense that they were looking back and they had spent a lot of time really thinking about whether or not they did the right thing in making this movie.
Yeah, I get that. I get the sense of that.
Yeah.
From the special features, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I don't think they were flippant about it. Like when they defended the content in the movie, it felt like it was coming from a thoughtful place, which I appreciated. And it felt like their intentions were in the right place. Even trying to like see if they could shoot on a particular area of the city, instead of just like rolling up and shooting, they went to the elders and like asked permission to shoot there. And so they kind of, if you can imagine the maturity of a bunch of 22-year-old kids, it felt like they were kind of ahead of their time, and tried to do the right thing. Let me just say it that way.
Yeah, heart's in the right place. So.
Yeah, exactly. Whether or not they got it perfectly, I don't know. I'm probably not the best person to ask, but like it felt like their heart was in the right place. So I think I'm probably landing somewhere where you are. There are things in this movie I really like. Like for example, they when this ghost of Nahala he kind of takes over a body, right? So it's a movie where the spirit of Nahala, he's like an angry spirit. He's a vengeful spirit. He doesn't like people coming in. I can't remember if it specifically calls out white people or if it's just like non-natives coming. I can't remember exactly how they frame it, but he's not happy with the progress that's affecting his people, and he embodies a human, and that human goes on a murderous rampage, right? That's kind of the setup, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And the kills when Nahala's killing, I thought were pretty good. They had some pretty gnarly kills.
Yeah, there's an impaling one in the museum,
That's right.
think. Yeah, that was a pretty cool kill.
Yeah, pretty good special effects, or practical effects. As this long, is it a spear that one of the statues?
It's like an arrow or something.
Arrow?
No, it's some.
Yeah, I
only watched it like a week ago.
No, it's okay. I saw it like 3-4 weeks ago. So, but I think it's part of the display, right?
Yeah, it is.
Get impaled on this, yeah. But it's slow and painful and bloody. It's good. I like it. It's a good kill. And then as they get towards the end, and you start to kind of becomes more of like almost like a spiritual battle with. They spend a lot of time in the film convincing one of the local tribes to like help, right? Because they know how to ward off this Nahala spirit. And once they finally do, and they start that battle, I think the practical effects are pretty cool there as well, as it starts to become more of a supernatural horror type. I mean, it's light. It's not like we're talking about interdimensions or something, but you can kind of see it's not just a human, and I think the effects there are pretty well done.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
But yeah, other than that, I don't know that there's too much to say about it. I think it's a fun slasher. As far as like what stood out, the cinematography does stand out. It's beautiful, and this guy, Fred Murphy certainly is a talented cinematographer. The only thing I'll say is that, have you ever been to Arizona by chance? It's a very specific question.
Yeah, no, I've never been.
No, it's okay. The only reason I'm asking is it's kind of cheating to say it's good cinematography because
yeah, especially with the scenic thing.
Yeah.
It's like, but just set up your camera and press go, and you're like, wow, it's beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really hard to find a bad shot there. It's like I always say this about Lawrence of Arabia. It's considered one of the most beautiful shot films ever, right? And I mean, who am I to argue? It's amazing. It's stunning. But also where they're filming, it's like, I mean, come on, it's hard to have a bad shot. Like, they found some amazing locations for that film and then shot well.
Yeah, I agree. It's very similar to some of the Technicolor John Ford westerns.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
they're absolutely stunning to look at, but I'm like, yeah, but half the work is done by the natural environment. It's not. It does look great, don't get me wrong, but I'm like, yeah, like you just find the location and point and shoot. That's oversimplifying, of course, but the environment is definitely contributing quite more than what other cinematographers' jobs have to do when they're working on sets and things like that, for sure.
Any DP listening is throwing something at the.
I'm sure they are, and that's fine. So
No
I don't
offense
mind.
meant. No offense meant. But yeah, no, I kind of feel that way. It's like it's hard to shoot bad in Arizona. But I wouldn't say the music is necessarily a standout. Like it's okay. I think the writing is probably a weak point in terms of
Yeah,
dialogue.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's fun. I mean, I can't say that I've seen any other Native American slashers where the focus is the killer itself is, angry at the white people and like out for revenge, and it's more than just like a standard slasher.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, different, unique, just didn't completely work for me. But not everything has to. I'm always happy to watch something that just, you know, gives me knowledge on something that I don't have no knowledge on. So yeah, it's good, but not great, as I said. So yeah.
Uh, and I was trying to think of how to segue between these next two. If this was a love letter to Arizona and Native American culture, I think release 482 kind of becomes a love letter to Paris in like a dark
Mm.
comedic way. So it's the first Polanski movie I'd ever seen. I've intentionally avoided his films for
Whoa, this is the first Polanski film you've ever watched.
it is.
Wow. Okay.
Um,
I understand why you'd avoid his films, but
yeah.
I think I watched a few of his films before I even knew about the allegations,
No, I mean even
against him.
Rosemary's
So
Baby. I mean it's hard to avoid them, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, especially like Rosemary's Baby and Repulsion and things. They're the classic films. Like Rosemary's Baby is in the pantheon of like the greatest horror films ever made. So yeah. Anyway, but how what did you get out of your first Polanski experience?
Well, I was pissed because I really liked it.
It's so good.
So, oh, I guess we haven't mentioned the name. So we're talking about The Tenant,
Yeah.
which is it's a film from, let's see, 1976.
Hmm.
This is a movie that has just a stacked cast. Probably most famous would be Shelley Winters, and then obviously Isabella Adjani, who most horror fans know from Possession. She has a great role here. Uh,
Yeah, for sure.
she's amazing in this. And then Melvin Douglas from The Changeling.
Hmm.
Um, so good, big cast. The movie's shot in English, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But it's a French film, fully a French film in terms of it. There's no like Americans in Paris kind of thing. Like this is a movie about French people in France, and specifically about Parisians, I would say, and
Hmm.
about this immigrant coming in and having a weird experience being in Paris. And but it's all shot in English.
Hmm.
And I'm curious if you agree that this is primarily a film about an immigrant coming into Paris, or if you think that I missed the point of.
No, I think that's a fair interpretation of the film. A lot of people would say that, and they're probably right, but Polanski's film, the pianist, i- is his most personal film because he was a Holocaust survivor.
Right.
And the film is about the Holocaust and stuff. So, but there's a lot more personal stuff going on with maybe Polanski's psyche, with being someone who survived all that. I think is a very psychological film, more so than his other films in what is known as the Apartment trilogy,
Okay.
which you haven't seen, obviously. So that would be Rosemary's Baby and Repulsion. Are sort of these connected thematic films that he made during his career, and this is the last one in that sort of trilogy that are very connected with um, sort of the downward spiral of an individual
Okay.
and how their surroundings, the people that they interact with, are influencing the way they feel and the way they act. But whereas this one differs from Rosemary's Baby and Repulsion, is that this one is very ambiguous in whether what is happening to this individual is actually happening or if it's in their head. Whereas the other two films, they play with that and then things get revealed. The truth is revealed about what the situation is. Whereas
Yeah.
this one is very ambiguous and a lot more pulling on the psychological elements, because you can interpret it how you want to, but like you're never explicitly told what the motives are and what exactly is happening here. And I love that for that reason. I think it's tough because Rosemary's Baby is so damn good as well, but I don't know. I think this one might be my favorite Polanski.
Oh wow.
As you said, the supporting cast is so good. And it's the cinematography is stunning. Like Sven Nykvist, who I always like to point out, was the director of photography for Sleepless in Seattle. But he has obviously he was the DOP for so many incredible Ingmar Bergman films.
Right.
And he's just a very, very talented photographer. So
Well, and especially, I think this film was very important to have like a sense of intimacy and kind of like closed rooms and claustrophobia, and that's a lot of what Bergman was famous for, right? So I think
yeah.
having Nick Fist work on this was a good choice for that was probably very comfortable for him.
Hmm.
But I love that you brought up the psychological aspect. So there's two things I think that really stood out to me in The Tenant. One is, as you mentioned, this kind of downward spiral of the human psyche, and I think never letting the audience know if it's in the mind. Well, we should mention Polanski is also the main actor here,
Yes, he is. Yeah.
and he plays a Polish guy who's trying to get settled into France, and he does. I mean, his name is Cholkovsky, and that name is mentioned 100 times, and I think that's also part of why it stood out to me that this is maybe a film about not fitting in, is because they just kept saying the name, and in most other films you just don't hear the name 100 times, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, so one of them is about this character Cholkovsky, and you don't know for sure if all the bad things in the film are actually happening to him or if it's more of an inward downward spiral. The other thing that stood out to me is that, and I don't know if you're going to say I'm a sick person, but I found this movie to be quite funny actually as well.
Oh no, it is.
Okay.
It is extremely funny.
Okay,
I
good.
find it funny. I think it's like it was marketed as a horror comedy in a way, like a psychological thriller slash horror comedy in a
Okay.
way. Like there is
Okay.
definitely some very humorous moments. I'm not saying like there was a few moments where because this is the second time I've seen this film. I've seen it before, but obviously on this brand new release, it was the second time I've seen it. Um, it's not always like laugh out loud, but it's
Oh,
very there are a couple of moments, but there is just some very humorous goings on, which I was like, that was funny. I'm not sure if I should be laughing, but I am. So,
yeah. Oh, it's dark humor, right? But
yeah,
it's
for
like
sure.
the person who runs the apartment that he's in is this like curmudgeonly old guy, and I almost view it more of like Terry Gilliam style of humor, where it's like there's humor in almost the anger sometimes, and like
Yeah, yeah.
the tension. There's just like they put humor into it. But yeah, I think this movie, I mean, we could do it would be very easy to do a whole episode just on the Tenant. I have a lot to say about it. And I think it's even the way that it's interesting to see, when there's a moment in the film when Polanski, as the character of Cholkovsky, starts putting on makeup and then starts putting on a wig and starts dressing as a woman.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, I wonder where they're going with this. And where they went, I wouldn't say it's necessarily like a transgender movie. I don't think that's what they were trying to do with that. I don't think that's why it's there in the film as like an advocacy piece. But
No, I don't. I didn't read that from
yeah,
watching it either.
no, it's tied into the spiral, and I don't necessarily want to. I'm trying to avoid spoilers. It's kind of
Yeah, yeah. Don't go any further because you might spoil something for someone who hasn't
it's
seen
kind
it
of tied into
yet.
to the spiral, right?
Yes.
But the way it's handled, again, it's just one of those things which I love about so many art house films, and they it's if when you're in the hands of a masterful kind of filmmaker, they can put stuff in a movie early on and just say like, trust me, you'll just watch the film, you'll figure it out. Just sit with me in this. I'm not going to over explain, right? You're not going to get a lot of exposition. Just let the film play out. It'll all make sense, I promise.
Hmm.
And I think he does a very good job of that here.
Yeah, it's having faith in your audience and just not holding their hand, which is a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah.
Way too much exposition is a big turn off. I don't mind a little bit here and there for when it's necessary, but if it's the exposition, if dialogue is exposition heavy, I immediately get turned off when I'm watching a film, no matter how good the visuals or the story is, to be honest.
Yeah.
So yeah, Polanski is very good at dealing with that. I'm not sure if I mean, you're based on your feelings towards the director, which are warranted. If you're maybe Vinegar Syndrome will put out, no, they probably won't because Criterion have those
Yeah.
other ones, don't they? So you're safe, at least from a Vinegar Syndrome standpoint for those the rest of the Apartment trilogy. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's
No, I mean,
an
at some point
interesting
I'll
one.
probably watch them films. Like,
Mm,
there's so many things we don't even know about other filmmakers, right? Like
of course.
it's not like he's alone as being a scummy human and a rapist in Hollywood. Like I it's a tension, right? Like I will eventually get to other Polanski movies, especially after seeing this and realizing why people like his movies so much.
Oh yeah, you need to see Chinatown. That might be his best film. Jack Nicholson is
Yeah.
incredible in it, and it's like one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best scripts for a film, like screenplays for a film ever. Like it's so good. As I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that personally, but that's an aside. But yeah, you should give them a go at some point. But I understand the trepidation with delving into such a problematic director's work.
And the thing that just gets my goat, and then we can move on, is that it's that he was unrepentant. And that's the
Mm.
thing that just kind of stuck with me, is he just ran, and again, this is just my opinion. He ran like a coward, didn't face up to the crime, and for some reason is still celebrated. Like I haven't been able to reconcile. I mean, as a human, he's celebrated. Like there's a petition going around where people are just like saying bring him back or whatever, right? So
Mm.
I've never been able to reconcile those two. But anyways, as a filmmaker, which we're talking about today, this movie is fantastic. And honestly, like scene for scene, I don't think there's any fat. Like
No.
it's just everything needs to be in the film. Every character is written to be unique and serves a purpose in the film. When it does go into some light surrealism, I think it's well contained and it fits the story perfectly. It's very easy to understand. Yeah, I just think this is an incredible film, and I was stunned that they got a new interview with Roman Polanski for this release.
Mm. I haven't watched that. I felt a bit weird about it. I chose to listen to the commentary with Troy Howarth and Nathaniel Thompson, which was really good. So um, I'd recommend listening to that one to any listeners who picked it up because it's they were always pretty good guys to accompany you through a viewing. I usually listen to like audio commentaries in the car because I don't have a lot of time to sit and watch films twice
Right,
for the
right.
purpose of an audio commentary. Um, Another aside, I'm glad that some labels are potentially or will be putting audio commentaries available on other platforms for people to listen to so that they don't have to sit and watch the film twice.
Yeah,
So I know that's I know that's a thing. Some labels will be doing that in the future, so I'm excited for that. But
Well, quick shout out to Deaf Crocodile, who's already
yeah,
disclaimed.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm in fact, it's funny you mentioned that. I'm actively going through Kat Ellinger's commentary for Delta Space Mission for the next time I travel.
Oh, nice, cool, cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've listened to that one. Yeah, I listened to that one in the car. So it's a good one. She's always a good listen and very informative. And I like the more um, generally, but the more academic type ones.
Okay.
I don't mind a fun one or one that's more of a hangout. They can be really good. But like I prefer the academic type ones, and people like Kat Ellinger and Sam Deegan and stuff. They do really cool academic or audio commentaries. Anyway, moving on.
Absolutely. Well, I have absolutely no idea how to segue between the Tenet and Vinegar Syndrome Title 483, which is Corpse Mania.
Oh, goodness me. I love this one.
Such a fun movie. Holy cow. I think the thing that jumps out to me right away is just atmosphere. I think this is just, I don't know how they were able to do it, but it's like, it has the atmosphere of like a noir
hmm
with the smoke and the dark alleys and like, it's got this, the killers in hiding and it, it's got this amazing atmosphere. But like what you see on the screen, especially in the first half of the film, is a lot of really nasty, gnarly, gross, like worms and maggots, and it's like a lot of disgusting corpse rotting, that kind of stuff. And then in
hmm
the back half of the movie, it turns into something else entirely. It's just like, what is going on?
It does. The genres do flip. I would say it's like a pastiche of different. It's tonally all over the place, but like in an enjoyable way. Because some
Uh-huh.
things where it flips too much, it can be like whiplash, and I don't enjoy it. But when it's
Uh-huh.
done in this way, I don't know what it is. It just seemed to strike a chord with me. I was very into this one. Yeah, starts off disgusting. It's about the film starts off about necrophilia.
Uh-huh.
So, and you're like, okay, this guy likes doing it with dead bodies, and the dead bodies are decomposing, and it's revolting. It's so disgusting and stomach churning.
Yep.
But then there are some like moments of humor in the film,
Yep.
which a lot of Hong Kong films incorporate into all of their genres, it
Yeah.
seems,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that can land or not. There's a lot of like action films or sort of some of the well, this is a Shaw Brothers feature
Yeah. Shaw
produced
Brothers,
film,
yeah.
isn't it? So, but there's some of the more martial arts orientated ones where the humor doesn't necessarily land for me. But I don't know if like the directors or the film studio are like, every film has to have some element of comedy in it. I don't know, to lighten the mood or just to break things up. But yeah, this one worked a lot more for me. But yeah, this is a wild film, utterly wild. Yeah, it's like almost like a giallo as well,
Uh-huh. Yep.
slasher, giallo, noir. Um, I wouldn't say body horror, but just disgusting body decomposing gooiness is just also incorporated into it, and the mystery element's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I really like the reveal, which obviously we won't say what's going on in the film,
Right.
just as it's a spoiler. But like, I like the reveal. I thought it was pretty good. I didn't guess it because I'm not very good at guessing, like the who the killer might be and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which I like not knowing. I like being oblivious because then I'm usually surprised. Whereas a lot of people watching, oh, I saw the killer coming a mile away, and I'm like, well, I didn't, and that means I probably enjoyed the film more than you did because
Exactly.
I'm usually more tapped into vibe and tone and just enjoying just the craziness of what's happening than to be paying too much attention to the intricacies of the plot sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I love this one. I thought it looked great. The set design was very lavish
Yes.
for the type of the content is quite lowbrow, I would say. That's not to disparage it, but like what is happening in the story is like disgusting
Yeah.
and repulsive, but like the way it looks and is set up and shot and stuff is like it's very nice looking film. Looks very good on the 4K. So yeah, what were your thoughts on it?
No, I agree. This is from the same director that made Boxer's Omen, right?
Yes, yes, that's correct. Yeah.
And he is a hugely influential director in Hong Kong cinema. There's another film he made called I'm just trying to look it up. I'm drawing up Hex, I think, right? Is the other big one. Um, and Yeah, Hex, that's right, and from 1980. Killer Constable is another one that people should watch. The guy's name is Kwei Chi-hung, and the one thing I really like about this release is his son, who is living in America now. They actually got him on the film, and so you're hearing from his son, who's able to give a lot of, like, I think, a cool perspective of like the influence of his dad and sort of where this movie fit, and like some background that you may not have had from other people. So it was nice to get that angle here for the release. And then Sam Deegan does a commentary, which obviously is going to be extremely well researched and very interesting. And then one of my new favorite writers and historians is Erica Schultz from the Unsung Horrors podcast. She's just this incredible depth of knowledge, and she writes the booklet of this. So, anyways, there's a ton of context around this film, and for anybody who's interested in Cat 3 movies or some of the more perverse like Shaw Brothers films, this is just like a perfect capsule of all of that, I think. Not only what's in the film itself, but then with the special features, you just get I think they really immerse you in this world and talk about why Kwei Chi-hung was so influential in all these things. So,
Yeah.
love that about it. The film itself, I mean, I don't know what to say. Like, I love this kind of stuff, right? Like, this is like stick this right into my veins, right? I mean,
It's exactly what we were talking about at the top of the show. Like we both come from like an art house sensibility, and we're now like going, I want you to mainline Corpse Mania into my veins because this is the sort of stuff that I live for. So I don't know how it's come to this, but
yeah,
this is my bag. This is very much the sort of thing that I'm looking for when I'm trying to discover, new cinema to me. I wouldn't say I wouldn't say it's a masterpiece or anything like that, but there's so much about this film. It's enjoyable. If you're a little bit perverse per se.
yeah. And there's one thing too that I think is true with a lot of Cat 3 films is that when they have the scenes where so essentially there's like a few different women that this guy Lee either buys to be like the first woman he buys to be his wife from a brothel, like she's dying, and so the people in the brothel are happy to get rid of her, right? Because it's like they don't know what to do with her.
Yeah.
But he takes her home and makes her his wife, and then she just stays on with her after the death, and it's after she dies, and then that starts to get like intimate with her. But the scenes where, first of all, there's like the scenes with the maggots and worms crawling over the body is certainly gross, but I don't think it ever goes over a line of where they just like force you to just like sit with it for too long.
Yeah.
Like I do think it's meant to be more entertainment in the sense of just like, oh, and then they like cut away,
Yeah, I'd say that's fair.
Yeah, I do appreciate that about it. And the yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know too much else to say. I just think like, oh, I should mention Grady Hendrix does a really good video essay too. I always like his work. I just forgot to mention that. But I don't really know what else to say about the film without giving away spoilers and these things. I just love, I think you nailed it in what you just said. I think there's something about the discovery of new films where I'm on the search for things like this because it doesn't tightly fit into any structure that I've seen before. And it sort of keeps surprising you. If you just stick with it, it kind of keeps surprising you. And I love it.
Yeah, completely agree. Well said.
This one has 6,000 titles in the limited slipcover, and it's already sold about 3,500. And I should mention the Tenant, not surprisingly, is selling out pretty fast. It has 8,000 units and it looks like it's about 1,000 left already. It's selling pretty fast. Again, not surprising. I don't know. I don't have anything else to say on Corpse Mania though. Is there anything else? I mean, this is one I highly recommend for anybody who's if you've seen Boxer's Omen and you liked it. I mean, this doesn't feel like Boxer's Omen, but
No,
it is
I wouldn't say you. I wouldn't even. Yeah, knowing that it's from the same director, it makes sense. But I wouldn't say you would recognize that this is the same director per se. Um, but yeah, if you enjoy the weirder side of the Shaw Brothers, or just any weird Hong Kong films, or you have any interest in like category 3, then type films, then you should really check this one out. It's definitely a standout release from this year from Vinegar Syndrome, in my opinion.
yeah.
Come to me. This isn't just a figment of your fantasy. You know I'm real, but still you seem confused and strange. Your life's being changed by Mystere.
Agreed. All right. So we are almost done with the mainline releases. Again, there was 3 so far. There's going to be 3 more, but they're all within a box set. So it's release 484. It's Forgotten Jolly, Volume 7, which I was stunned they're already up to 7.
Crazy, right?
Yeah. I mean, I have
Have
them,
you?
but
Yeah. I would say, have you got them all?
yeah, because I've
Yeah.
been collecting long enough to have them all. But like, I don't know. It's just weird to think of Vinegar Syndrome has 7 of like anything, because they're, part of what they do is offer so much variety. But this is there's 3 films in this. I think it probably makes sense to give a little something about each of them, just brief, as opposed to talking about it as a whole. It has 5,000 boxes that were made, and there's about 1,000 left. And this one does not have a standard. So if you're a collector of the Jolly sets, this probably goes past Black Friday if there's 1,000 left, but it also might not. I don't know that it for sure that it would go past Black Friday. Not trying
The Forgotten Jolly set, yeah, not to try and cause FOMO or anything here, but like they usually last a bit longer than other things. Mainly, I don't know if it's just to do with the price or because, although I don't agree that every film in these Forgotten Jolly sets are forgotten. I have some not issues with that. That's a bit extreme, but like I feel like if you know Giallo films, a couple of the films in this box set for me was completely unknown. But like previous box sets, there's been a couple of films across them that have been like that could have really done with a standalone release. But yeah, this box set is one of my favorite Forgotten Jolly box sets for numerous reasons. Yeah.
I actually was about to say the same thing. I think they nailed it with this one. We're gonna get into this in a second. I need you to cover me. The only one I couldn't get to this month because work travel got insane was Sweets from a Stranger. So when we get to that, I'm gonna need you to take the lead. But
no worries.
Starting off with A, because they do it like it's 484 and then A, B, and C, right? So starting off with A is Mystere, which had an more English name of Dagger Eyes. And I think it's interesting to me because this film really seems to be built around Carol Bouquet,
For sure.
who was 2 years previously had been in a Bond movie, For Your Eyes Only. She was a Bond girl. Although I feel like they need to update the term Bond girl. I don't love that, that term, but anyways, she's a Bond girl. For me, although she's great in For Your Eyes Only, she's most famous for being in Buñuel's a Buñuel actor.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
I'm just blanking on the name. I'm seeing it. Is it? I just saw this movie like a month ago. It's just completely slipping my name, my mind. It's I'm almost there. That Obscure Object of Desire. Thank you. I was driving me crazy.
Mhm.
The Obscure Object of Desire is a Buñuel film that is I think everybody should watch. It's just unbelievable movie. Um, Looking into obsession, and I think it's kind of most famous for being a movie where Buñuel gets two separate women to play the same character, but it's not like an alternate reality thing. It's not like there's no twist in the story. He just intercuts the women in different scenes depending on what's going on. And it's extremely jarring the first time you watch it.
Mm.
But in typical Buñuel fashion, you every single time you watch it, you start to just kind of get into this groove of the film. And if you let it just happen to you as opposed to fighting that it makes no sense, it becomes very powerful, and you get to see how these actors are used based off of the emotion of the scene, and they're used to pull different things out of the main character. So, Obscure Object of Desire is an amazing movie, and Carol Bouquet is she has an interesting beauty to me because she's a
Yeah.
striking beauty, but I wouldn't say she's like hot or like she's not like somebody who's like what's the word for it? She's not like somebody who I think is easily approachable. She has almost this like timeless, like statuesque kind of I don't know, beauty that like yeah, it's to me she's like somebody who's could be in a museum in a statue with very little effort. She just has this sort of different presence to her.
I agree with that. She she has a coldness about her.
Yeah,
That
coldness.
makes any sense. I think that is explored in the special features a little bit with some of the interviews. Yeah, she's very beautiful, but it is a different kind of beauty than what you might expect from other types of film stars. Yeah, it's very aloof and very um, um, sort of like giving off the vibes of "don't touch me" or
Yeah.
don't come too close" sort of thing. If that makes any sense to anyone listening or to you, it's a very odd thing to say and how to describe her, but she's definitely interesting to look at. Yeah, what were your thoughts on this
Well, the reason,
Mystere?
and again, we're fumbling through exactly how to put definition around it, but I think the reason that the beauty is worth calling out and the specific type of beauty that she has is worth calling out is because it's very central to the way this movie's shot. This is my favorite one of the set overall. Again, I haven't seen Sweets from a Stranger yet, but um, although I really like Obsession too, which we'll get to in just a second. But this is my favorite one for a variety of reasons, but I think mostly because the way that Mystere is shot, it the whole movie feels like this kind of dream in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the way that they wove the story together. I think it's a very excellent script. Um, I think it's fun to watch Gabriella Tinti, John Steiner. It's like it's just they. I think they do a good job of pulling in a good cast. Um, as when you first meet Carol Bouquet, you can tell she's a high dollar like sex worker
Mm-hmm.
and call girl who is she has a lot of agency in this film. She has a lot of power. Um, and I think that her character is never written to be subjected to men. Like she seems like she's always in control.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that.
Yeah, and then there's an interesting element written in about where it almost feels like they're trying to call reference to Bond movies in a couple of different ways, which we can maybe get into. But I
Mm.
think there's definitely a tie into like bringing in a Bond girl. It feels like they would have gotten directions like make it a little bit of an adventure or something like that. But um, in some elements. But yeah, no, I like this movie a lot. I think it's uh, I'm surprised it's forgotten in some ways, and I do hope this gets more attention because of the release.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. It's a very atypical giallo. You know,
Right.
the stylistic trappings of what like most people would associate with a giallo are they're there and they're not there, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
it's we have, you know, a killer that their identity is concealed, but the perspective of the story, and even though like most giallos are very highly stylized, this is very different. And yeah, I was fascinated by this as I was watching it. It was good to see Gabriele Tinti in something other than a Black Emmanuel film for me personally, because I got that box set recently,
Yeah.
well, not recently, and I've been working my way slowly over it. But it was good to see him in something different. He's been in a lot of Italian genre films and stuff, but yeah, that was great. And yeah, I do feel that the not to spoil anything or to jump too far. Well, I am jumping too far. I'm jumping to the end, but I didn't like the ending,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I know it was requested from the producers to add on this very shoehorned, like tacky ending onto the film, which does like affect my appreciation of the film a bit. And that was sort of like ties into the whole Bond thing with like
Right. Exactly.
like a prologue that has sort of like ties things up and has a sort of maybe a happy ending as such. I didn't like that aspect of the film too much, but from a visual standpoint, an audio standpoint, and just the vibe of the whole thing, I thought it was fantastic. And just the context that's given from the special features and stuff, I was really impressed with some of the stuff that's on this disc. I really enjoyed the interview with the director, Enrico Vanzina. So he worked very closely with his brother, who's also who wrote the film, I think. Yes.
I think it's the other way away. I think
Oh, the other round. You're right. You're right. It's the other
yeah.
way. So Carlo is the director. My apologies. And his
No.
brother wrote it. And they're, to my understanding, they're very much they're very huge in Italy. Like the household names that hasn't translated over into other countries and stuff. And to get this guy on the disc for an interview apparently is pretty impressive. And it was good to see the interview with Greg Snegoff, who is like a prolific dubber for Italian genre films. When he's actually in the film playing it, has a very small part as one of the police officers or the detectives or whatnot. And hearing his that's where you understand what sort of person Carol Bouquet was on set and stuff. She was very cold and aloof and didn't socialize with people, and sort of like her character on screen seems like she was very much like that, and I'm not getting the vibe that she was like a method actor or anything like that. So I think it was just translating into her character very well. And I don't suppose you had a chance to listen to the audio commentary either.
I listened to the first 15 minutes of it. I like I really a huge fan of Eugenio Ercolani. From a producer standpoint, and he's, you know, the fact that we're able to get an interview with Enrico Vancina is, you know, I'm going to assume that's attributing that to Ercolani, because he's just such a master at what he does for these releases. And I love there's people in every country that do a good job of like setting the context for what was happening. Like Frank Jang does it for a lot of Shaw Brothers movies. And I think Ercolani's kind of like that to me for Italy, where he just knows so much about the industry and he knows so much about the filmmakers, and you really go in a deep dive. So I'm excited to listen to this one. I only heard the beginning of it, but yeah. Did you finish it?
Yeah. I've listened to the commentaries for all of these. I'm just a nut for consuming special features and stuff on releases. So yeah, I've listened to it. It's always good. Eugenio, Nathaniel, and Troy, they regularly collaborate on things. Have been recently for a number of years, and they always seem to have a good back and forth. And well researched and well thoughtful input into the film's history and production and everything like that. So that's really worth your time to listen to if you like the film, and even if you didn't like the film. I always think these sort of things give more context and appreciation. But yeah, I like that one. And you said the next one, unless you have any more thoughts on that one,
No,
I
no, no,
thought
no, no. I was
obsession.
about to transition to
Yeah,
go.
obsession, a taste for fear was my favorite from the set. I adored this one for a number of reasons I'll get into. The film is, again, I think this is the atypical giallo box set. All most of the other ones in previous editions or volumes of these film forgotten giallo box sets, they're forgotten or sort of lost or forgotten about, as the title suggests, but they are giallo films at the heart, and they're very stereotypical of what the genre has to offer. Obsession is a completely different beast. The whole giallo element is basically in the mystery. That's just what it is, as it translates more or less. And this one is basically like a 90-minute music video. And I absolutely bloody loved it. It is so entertaining. It's very sleazy. And I don't mind saying that I quite enjoyed that element of the film. And it's just very cool with its visually, it's shot in scope. I want to say it's shot in scope. It's very beautiful to look at, and it's widescreen, and it has gel lighting, which is sort of associated with the giallo films. Can be a lot of the time, especially like Argento and things like that. But the soundtrack is very synth heavy, and I love that. It's quite queer as well. There's a lot of celebration of, not just the female body, but male, and just various different like queer things going on in the film, which I really appreciated. And I thought that this is very atypical for the genre, and I absolutely adored it. I don't think it works completely, but there's a lot of films that I don't think work that I absolutely adore than films that I can't critique, but I like them less, if that makes sense. So, but despite its flaws, I was absolutely enamored with this one. And yeah, this is fantastic. We're directed by I'm really bad at pronouncing things, but Raffanini is the surname, but Picchio, I think that's how you say it. Starring Virginia Hay, who's probably best known from Mad Max in it, and it's just I had a blast with this one. I was smiling from ear to ear, as it's like there is a through point with the plot and stuff, but it's very vignette-y. It's very elliptical, in my opinion. So it's very music video orientated, and there's stuff in the special features that explores like the influence on TV culture on the film industry, and that is very apparent in this film. It's very all about moments and just focusing in on very stylish. There's a lot of sexuality in the film, and it's just a blast from start to finish. And I think there's some problems with the reveal of the killer, which is not atypical of some of the what the genre has to offer,
Right.
Which is just part of the time that it come from, I guess. But yeah, you said that you preferred Mystere, so like, what did you enjoy about Obsession, and what made Mystere better for
Well,
you?
it's not to say that I didn't like
Mm.
Obsession, because for the first maybe 45 minutes or so of Obsession, I was ready to write that, like, this is my, like, the discovery of 2024 for me.
Wow.
Like, it's just for all the reasons you mentioned. I think the everything is so bright, like the lighting is actually bright, and strong use of color in the costumes and in the body paint, and in the way sexuality is explored, it's like not explored, but like the way they show sexuality in this is very like raw and passionate, but because they're taking pictures and not videos, it's like it's not pornographic, but it's there's nudity throughout the whole thing, and I think it's like a very like a celebration of the body, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And I think there's some interesting choices, like the one woman who has an obsession over the bodybuilder woman. It's like a different body type than you would typically see that obsession for, right? But
Hmm.
she's crazy for this woman, and like you see it in her eyes, and but then there's just like mm, there's like for the set for the shot, they got to get the shot, and they need somebody for the shot, and so there's this constant like looking for the next beauty to put into the shot. Um, but yeah, I think it's a stunning film. I love it a lot, and I think as it gets into the back half of the film, into like the actual plot, which sounds weird, but it kind of lost me a little bit just in this.
Okay.
I was like, you know, I just want this to be. It almost felt like something Andy Warhol would make in the beginning, or
Yeah, I
something
can
that
see that.
would come from his factory.
Yeah.
Mm. And then it sort of I don't know exactly what it became, but yeah, but I like the movie a lot.
Mm.
I just think that Mystere for me was like a um, maybe like a little bit of a tighter story in a way. I agree with you. I don't like the epilogue. I think it's kind of a like why even have it?
Hmm.
Like it adds nothing other than makes her feel like kind of it gives her some agency and I guess comes like a strong action star. But I don't know that the film needed that. But yeah, I think these two in the same box set to me is wild because I'm going to ask you about Sweets from a Stranger next. But whatever is in Sweets of the Stranger, this automatically jumps up to the one of my favorite um, boxes from Vinegar Syndrome altogether, but especially Best Jolly Box.
Yeah. So moving on to Sweets from a Stranger, this one is probably the most grounded of the films. Definitely less stylish, I'd say. Like in definitely from these like Mystere and Obsession. Um, it tells the story of sex workers that are being picked off by a mysterious unknown person, and how the sex workers all band together to try and protect each other and try and find out who this person is who is, you know, killing their sisters as such. And it's a very social it's very there are exploitative elements in this film, but the film is extremely sympathetic and on the side of sex workers, which may not be the case in other like Italian genre films of this type. So it's very atypical in that instance, and it's really interesting to see how the different types of sex workers live their lives, and how some of them like have families and how they try and protect them from what they do to make ends meet, basically. And yeah, it's multiple different sort of sub stories are included in this, and but we mainly follow this one character who has moved. I don't think it says exactly the location, but she's moved away from her family home, and it pretends that she's working as like a stewardess, which is why she's away all the time,
Okay.
like an air stewardess or whatever. And she's actually, you know, walking the streets and picking up, you know, clients, shall we say. And she gets embroiled in this ongoing sort of search for this killer whilst trying to protect herself and her like newfound friends. And the way it gives you like the red herrings and stuff of like who it sort of indicates might be the killer is really well done. The script is extremely tight, I found, and it's got the most I say it's got the best script of all three of the films. I'd
Okay.
say in terms of like cohesiveness and really caring for some of these characters and having sympathy and an understanding of what some of these sex workers are going through and understanding their viewpoint on why they do their work and stuff, because they're not all like coerced into it via like a pimp or anything like that. They're all like choosing to have this way of life, and it's just a really interesting insight into that, told through like a giallo film with exploitation elements in it. So it's like a very, not dichotomous, that's not the right word, but it's a very like there's two ends of the spectrum here where it's like trying to be, it's not trying, it is a successful socio-political film with like a commentary on the sex worker industry, but also it's using that in an entertaining way by also having things like nudity and titillation along the way. So it's like it's an interesting dynamic there, and I think it's great. And the special features again, these are all sort of produced by Eugenio, and he has a commentary on here with Troy Howarth, and that's really good. Listen to that one in the car again. And then the director, Franco Ferrini interview is really good. It's quite short, it's 13 minutes, but there's a lot packed into that 13 minutes, I thought. And then the composer, there's an interview with the composer, Umberto Smela. Apologize if I've butchered that, but that's really good because the score in this film is quite rousing. It's quite moving. I found in places, particularly when some of the elements of the story are uncovered towards you. It's quite a hard hitting film towards the end. I thought anyway. It's quite sad and melancholic. But yeah, I implore you to watch this one. I'm sure you will get around to it. You just said you've been busy, but it's yeah, for me this is probably my favorite Forgotten Jali box set that Vinegar Syndrome have put out to date. The combination between the films, I mean, Obsession will probably make my top 10 discoveries of the year for me personally. I was enamored with that film.
Love it.
Definitely has a lot of rewatch, but I haven't rewatched it yet. I've only watched it like last week, but I can see this one being like in regular rotation in my sort of Jali watching future. But yeah, the box set included with all the special features and stuff is just such a great package, and hopefully more people. These tend to sell, so it's not like we're trying to convince people to get these ones, but they tend to more often than not get picked up in sales. I'd say, just from talking to people and experience in the community, because these things aren't always the cheapest thing, but I think it's very much worth the investment. And I love the artwork as well on these releases. I forget the guy's name. Samelin. That's Robert. Is it Robert Samelin? Is that right? Does that ring a bell?
That's right. It's Robert Samelin. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, his art is so good. He's done a load of like the slips and stuff, slip art covers for Vinegar Syndrome, and I'm a big fan of his style. And he definitely paints an appropriate picture of what's going on in these films. And yeah, big fan of this box set. Yeah, that's all I have to say about Sweets from a Stranger. Hopefully that sold it to you to like maybe watch that sooner rather than later. But it's a good one. It's also got a really cool. I don't know if you've seen Sallow at all. It's got there's a really small but very great and very memorable performance from Laura Betty. And she plays a sort of an aging sex worker, shall we say. She's been around the block many times, and she has a small scene in the film which is very, very good. And I was pleased to see her pop up in the film for a brief period. Yeah, she has a small scene in the film, but it's very memorable and one of the best scenes in the film. So yeah, look out for that. You can't miss her. She's a very distinctive individual. So yeah, so there we go.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think I feel the same way. This is probably if I was gonna say get any of the Forgotten Jolly box sets, this is probably the one I would say to start with. The movies are so unique. Obsession and Dagger Eyes or Mystere are just, I don't know. They're just really. It's not. there's like some films are forgotten for a reason, but I don't think any of these films are forgotten for a reason. Like I think this is truly like good finds, good discoveries for them.
100%.
Now for the next three that we're going to talk about, we can go somewhat quickly because if I remember you saying correctly, you've not seen the two VSAs and the cinematograph release yet, right?
No, I haven't got them. I'm definitely interested in getting Shanks, and Mindbenders looked interesting, but like, we all have budgets, so you're gonna have to speedily sell me on these ones.
Morning in the cafeteria was just another example of the total disrespect these children have for authority. Now, as I said in the last staff meeting, Kingston High School has had the privilege to be selected by the Behavior Modification Research Institute as a test site for their latest achievement in adolescent psychology. Let's rock and roll!
So we have the VSA 49 is Mindbenders, which is a Canadian, like
Close.
I know, right? It's not America. I don't know. Probably Australia. Yeah, it's a Canadian teen sci-fi comedy. So I really think they were trying to take that one, what's it called? Weird Science.
Yeah.
It to me it really feels like a Weird Science kind of rip off a little bit, but it's very goofy high school boys as like the leads. It's silly. It's they're even from the first scene you can tell this is not meant to be taken seriously in the sense that it's a horror comedy or a sci-fi comedy. And even the reveal of kind of what's going on and like where the killings are coming from and all that is short, and then the movie just kind of like resolves. So it's not like this is not a deep one. This is a silly high school sci-fi movie that you just throw on if you're bored, or if you just want to watch, if you're a big fan of maybe like the 80s teen dramas or comedies.
I mean, I do like that genre. It feels more like hangouty type thing, as you said. Not if you're bored, but like it's put on. Like, is this the sort of thing that's maybe appropriate to watch with family? Like, or is it not quite that style? Like, because you could watch Weird Science is like early teenagers could watch that, and it wouldn't be inappropriate. Like,
No,
what's the vibe on this one? Could you watch this with like not necessarily a young family, but like maybe sort of fairly grown up kids sort of thing?
No. I think.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
No, you totally. No, you could. You totally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting question. I think you nailed it. I mean, it's not even really a John Hughes type. I mean, this is just like a teen, sexy sci-fi comedy, but light on the sex. I mean,
right.
It's just more, yeah. I mean, it's just more. I don't even know exactly where to put it. So, one interesting thing from like a filmmaker perspective is this was a movie directed by Jeannie Joseph. As a director, she's probably most well known for Spookies, and this one will put her on the map a little bit. But she had a long career as an adult actress, as a porn actress before she got into kind of directing. And so there's a cool interview with her on here talking about this movie. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's one of those ones that's a pretty clear black and white. Like, you either like teen sci-fi comedies and this sounds interesting to you, or it's just not going to bite. Like, this is a pretty straightforward one in my eyes.
Sure. The artwork's very enticing. I love the slip on this.
Yeah.
So it caught my eye for definitely. So
it's a little bit of a, well, you know what? I don't know how to say that without spoiling it. So let me just say, I wouldn't focus too much on the sci-fi part.
Okay, fair enough.
It's in there, But if you're a fan of teen comedies with like a twist, small twist, I think this is right up your alley. And it's probably lesser known because it's Canadian, I'm guessing, but it's a
Hmm.
well-made one, and it's very easy to. This could go stand, the way it looks, the way it's shot, the writing, it could stand up with any of them.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're gonna go in a completely different direction. So, Dial D for Demons was one I wanted to hate, and I ended up liking.
Why did you want to hate it?
So it came out in the year 2000, and it's a very 2000 movie in the way it looks.
Okay.
In the sense of, there was that it was like digital was kind of taking over.
Hmm.
It wasn't like super high quality yet. And this is a movie about six teenagers, or maybe no, not teenagers, six like young adults that go away on this trip, and the house is haunted, and the horror starts. Right?
Okay.
The scenes where it's just the six friends, they're super obnoxious. Like it's almost like like a bad Friday the 13th movie or something,
Right.
or like just something where the way the characters are interacting is just like, oh my God, this is brutal. Um, but I will give them credit, because there's a pretty famous director who's behind this, a guy named Billy Tang, probably most famous for Dr. Lamb.
Yeah.
So the guy knows how to make people uncomfortable. And when the movie turns, he does a good job of keeping the surprises up, and also keeping um, the mystery up. Like there's some scenes in this movie in the back half that if you told me Kiyoshi Kurosawa directed it, I wouldn't argue with you.
Okay. That's high praise.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's a good turn. I'm not going to say it necessarily looks like a typical Kiyoshi
Mm.
Kurosawa movie, because it is that low budget digital style of filmmaking from the early 2000s. But the way that he holds tension and uses music and the acting and everything to like build this horror is very well done. And I was surprised at how much I ended up liking this, even though you just have to get past the first 15 minutes. Um, there are some people that like a lot of those types of horror movies. Almost, you see it more in slasher, I think, where it's like a group of friends getting together and then something happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this one is not a slasher. It's not, I don't think really at all. It's more of a, it's probably closer to like Juon, or um, The Grudge,
Yeah.
or the Ringu. It's almost more along those lines,
Okay.
uh, than it is like a slasher. Um, and the description of the killer and like what's going on is well done. It's sweet. I mean, not sweet, but like it's well done, and it's disarming in a way. It's not what you'd expect. It's why I said kind of sweet. It almost has like a sweet spirit to it almost, which is
Okay.
surprising, but in a good way. Yeah. So Dial D for Demons. I would say this one, of the two new VSAs this month, this one is more in line with like what I enjoy.
Yeah.
Mindbenders for me is not one that I would typically buy, but I mean I'll keep it. It's not bad. I just I don't love those teen sci-fi comedies as much.
Yeah. What one thing before we move on to the last release? What did you manage to watch the video essay by Sam Deegan on the disc? Because that I didn't realize she'd done that. Usually a selling point for me.
Yeah, I'm really glad you called that out. No, I didn't get to I was running out of time, but when I was watching this, I didn't get to the special features on Dial D for Demons. Although I would love to hear Sam Deegan talk about Billy Tang, because she's very good at Cat 3 in general.
Mm.
And this was a very influential director. So I have to imagine that video essay is fantastic.
Yeah, no doubt.
Malcolm Shanks hears no evil. He speaks no evil because he's too busy making dead people walk. If you're nervous and you feel jumpy, Malcolm will show you how to relax. The great artist Marcel Marceau plays Malcolm Shanks and many other forms of life, rated PG.
All right. So I would say I'm a fan of cinematograph, and in that line, there are some movies that are great. But I have found the movie within cinematograph that now defines it for me.
Okay. Tell me more.
So the cinematograph release for this month is a William Castle movie. It's called Shanks. And it blew my mind. So watching this film is, I should mention they're up to the 10, so this is the 10th release in cinematograph. And I'm gonna be abrupt and do one more interjection and say, if just because people are thinking about the sell, this has 2,400 copies left as of, I wouldn't say it's selling great initially, which is a shame. And this is one that I'm gonna say, like, of all the ones we've talked about today, I would say the Tenant and Corpse Mania are both like ones that I would say are must-haves, and this is the third. Oh no, the Forgotten Jolly was really good too. Damn it, they did a good job. They did a
Yeah.
good job this month in general. Uh, but okay, this movie feels like this is going to be a very specific movie. Did you ever see Jack Demy's Donkey Skin?
No, I've never seen that film.
It's okay. So it's another fairy tale. And then this is a celebration of, first of all, Marcel Marceau, who for years was the world's most famous mime.
Mhm.
And this was him. He did a few roles. Just a few years before he made this, he spoke for the first time on camera. Oh no, it was after this. He spoke for the first time on camera. And when he spoke, it was irony because Mel Brooks got him to come into a silent movie. Mel Brooks made that movie called A Silent Movie.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was an actual silent film. And the only person who spoke in it was Marcel Marceau. And you got to hear his voice say, no. And just a little bit of playful irony. But this movie stars Marceau as a character who does not speak, although there is talking in the film. There is music in the film. It's not a totally silent film. But he does not speak. He's a puppeteer. And he finds this device that allows him to take dead bodies and move them around almost like Weekend at Bernie style. So it's not that they're reanimated, they're recently deceased, so they don't stink yet. They're not, their face is still the same color. It hasn't started to get whiter or they haven't started to decompose. And he's able to move them around and have them walk. And like he goes shopping with them at one point, pull stuff off the shelf, and he's able to do all this control over them. And then things turn a little bit. You get to see the character kind of has a little bit too much fun, realizing that he's, he now wants there to be dead people because he can like play with them more and have friends now and like build the kind of world that he wants, right? But yeah, it is just amazing. Like this movie it's a celebration to, I would say, classic filmmaking, in that they have like intertitles like a silent film would have.
Oh, awesome.
And it's a celebration of puppetry, that kind of old style of entertainment, like almost like circus style entertainment, right? Marceau himself has this he has like a Gene Wilder style of like empathy and sweetness to him. So, Gene Wilder's this crazy guy, but when you need him to be emotional, he can pull it off, right?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
And I think Marceau has a very similar energy to me. There's a weird relationship with a teenage girl, but it's never made bad. It's maybe a little bit uncomfortable, but keeping in mind that this is a fairy tale, that is more common in fairy tales for
Hmm.
an adult puppeteer to be making birthday gifts for this young girl and like helping her get ready for her birthday party and getting a dress for her and like things
Yeah.
like that that in any other context would be huge red flags. Because this is a fairy tale, I think yeah, I think they pull it off well, that balance there. It's a very, very delicate balance. But I think they pull it off. This is a movie that is weird to me in all the beautiful ways. Um, and when there's moments that become very sad in it.
Okay.
And when it gets sad, I think it's also handled well. Um, and then the final, like the ending sequence, or like near the end, there's a big sequence that changes color tone for a moment, and um, yeah, I just think like I think that this is one of those movies that it is a singular experience. There's characters that enter the film late in the movie that have that are new and that have a big influence on the outcome of the film. So even from a writing perspective, it's not like you don't get to build up with this world.
Yeah.
It's all done very much by somebody who just had like a very specific story to tell, and told it without regard to a lot of filmmaking conventions. Um, but yeah, it's just of all the finds that Liberty is able to pull in with the cinematograph line, this to me is just one of those movies that's going to stick with me for a long time. And I cannot wait to get into the Kim Newman commentary on this because I would love to hear Kim Newman talk about William Castle.
Oh yeah, I love Kim Newman's commentaries and just like his interviews and stuff on discs.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm probably gonna pick this one up in like what 11 days or so because this is
Yeah.
the Black Friday sale or Black
Yeah.
Friday stuff. So I know it won't be on sale for then, but I'll just add it to my basket and purchase this one before it's gone because I was interested in it and from what you've been saying about it, it sounds like a must get disc. So yeah, it sounds fantastic. So
They brought in a lot of the heavy hitters. So there's essays by Heather Drain,
yeah,
Alexander Nicholas, Murray Leader. Like this is, they really brought in the heavy hitters for this. Daniel Creamer has a good visual essay that I can't wait to check out. So, and then I, there's this thing in Monsieur Hulot and like Jacques Tati, right?
yeah,
That guy Jacques Tati had this sadness in a lot of his films because he was sort of like mourning the world changing faster than he wanted it to change. And I think when you look at a lot of these classic performers, one thing they all had in common was this sense of like sadness in their eyes, right? And I think Marcel Marceau does it very well. He has a deep sadness that is unique, and I think is wonderful. And I think when the movie needs to go sad, it does it beautifully, and when it needs to be light, he also has a good smile. And yeah, to me, this is a must-own.
awesome, fantastic.
Well,
I know sometimes you usually talk about some of the partner labels, but I'm not sure I have time to talk about those today. So
no, it's okay. It was a good month for partner releases, but one thing I'm gonna do is in December is a partner only month.
yeah, that's fantastic.
So I'll probably spend a little bit more time just highlighting certain labels and talking about releases from the last few months and those things because it's getting unwieldy in a good way. I love the partner.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I pick up a fair amount of them. A big fan of like Agfa, and I've been really getting into SOV stuff. So
Yep.
I've got a lot of the Saturn's Core stuff. Interested in just so much. Decalogue, Bleeding Skull. I've been a huge fan of the stuff that they've put out as a budding label.
Yep.
So yeah, it's all very overwhelming though.
Yeah, I want to do. Yeah, I really like Connie as well. I think they find some really unique movies. So yeah, I'm gonna spend some more time on that in December. But no, look, uh, love your perspective on film. It seems like we're aligned at a lot in what we like about movies and why we like them. So it's fun to talk to you.
Yeah,
Um,
it's been great. It's been great. Thanks for having me on the show. It's been a blast. Thank you so much.
yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you, Sam. Well, that was awesome, Sam. Thank you so much for doing that. That was cool. I love the passion, and it's great to sit down with a fellow recovering snob, as it were, and see Vinegar Syndrome through that lens. We have a treat. Celeste de la Cabra is back. So let's see what's on the docket for the adult titles this month.
My name is Catherine Burgess. I'm a Vogue model and star of the new X-rated thriller, Through the Looking Glass. As I'm talking to you, I'm really dead.
Through the Looking Glass, Penthouse calls it a work of art, while Playboy says it's a landmark movie, proving that hardcore can be handled with class. Come Through the Looking Glass and experience this year's most controversial motion picture, Through the Looking Glass, rated X.
Okay, good evening everyone. My name is Celeste de la Cabra, and welcome back to 15 Minutes with You, the segment where I review all the new titles on the Melusine site, so all the X-rated adult and sexploitation films. Freaks and perverts rejoice as we are back yet again. This time we're only discussing one release, but it is quite the doozy, so I guess let's just get into it. You know what, though? First, I'm just going to say that I have decided on keeping that name because I think it is appropriate, and I think it gives me a good barometer or sort of time frame to shoot for, so that I keep my yapping to a reasonable sort of limit. Okay, so the only release we'll be talking about today is spine number 3 for the proper official Melusine line. The name of the film is Through the Looking Glass. It is directed by Jonas Middleton, or Joseph as his real name is. And first, let me just say some things about the Melusine line in general, because I think that they continue to knock it out of the park. I have all 3 of them. I've watched all 3 of them. The first one being The Tale of Tiffany Lust, and the second one being Blonde Ambition, and then the third one being this, obviously. First of all, the packaging. If you're a real packaging freak, like, you really gotta get on these. For real, like, they are so fucking cool. Like, they're like Godiva chocolate bars or something. Like, they're so, maybe that's not the best point of comparison because that's not actually a particularly bougie product or whatever, but they feel elaborate and sleek and beautiful and like Art Deco or something, you know? It's got that like very beautiful, classy New York aesthetic to the packaging. Like, they really did a good job in creating something unique. I don't know how to describe the shape in which the slipcase is, but it's like maybe like a ribbon or something. I don't fucking know. It's like it's a top-loading slipcase, and then you can just see it on the website, and then you can tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. But it's almost like like a bas relief or something. Like, you pull the top off, no pun intended, and then there's like alternate artwork underneath of it, and it's like in a kind of a like an arrow, like a down-facing arrow shape, I suppose. And then you pull the slipcover out, and the slipcovers are completely custom made too, in that they are side-loading slipcovers instead of top-loading. So the sort of y-axis of the slipcover is the part that is hollowed out or open, or where you insert the case itself. And then they come with booklets and art cards, and it's just a whole thing. Also, the packaging itself, the slipcases are like a very soft kind of matte finish to them. There's really nothing else like it. And, you know, VS continues to up their game and invent new things in terms of packaging, but this might be my favorite, like, packaging that I've seen, really. It's just gorgeous, and it's a little bit of a pain when you have to pop the disc in and out all the time. But in any case, the line has been exclusively 4K, at least so far, and all the transfers have been wonderful, and all the films have been really good too. Like Tale of Tiffany Lust is great, but Blonde Ambition, man, is so fucking good. So that's your quick mini review on that. But I would say if you're trying to get into adult films, I'm going to recommend that, and I'm going to recommend this, and it just kind of depends. You're the meme of the guy at the fork of the road, and you have two paths in front of you, okay? To the left, you have Blonde Ambition, which is going to be, if you're into like comedies and like lighthearted fare and maybe like classic Hollywood screwball stuff, romantic comedies, that kind of thing. If you're into that, you should get Blonde Ambition. You should watch that. And if you're into sick, depraved, fucking bizarre horror art house, you should get Through the Looking Glass. Okay, so gosh, there's so much to talk about with this. I will say that the supplements on this are excellent, and you're gonna get your money's worth on this thing. Yeah, there's an entire second feature-length film. It is Middleton's first feature-length film, and it's fucking awful, but we'll get to that in due time. Let's first talk about Through the Looking Glass. So it's essentially about a woman who is haunted by the ghost or a demon, something like that. The visage of her recently deceased father. How do I talk about this without any spoilers? I'm not sure if talking about this would be a spoiler. Let's just say that she is tempted into a world of depravity beyond a mirror in her attic. And so beyond that mirror, there is just like fantastical worlds of sexual depravity. Let's just say that if you know what the ICU is, if you've been a follower of my ventures and you're familiar with that, this qualifies, as does the other film. There's a theme going on with this director, and look, I'm not judging or anything, but like, come on, man. Something going on there, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, the film is kind of a tough watch. It's not particularly erotic, although there are some scenes that are fairly erotic and fairly sexy. The lead actress is gorgeous. Jamie Gillis is in it, as he always is, killing it, as he always does. What else is going on here? Gosh, it's so much. I don't know. A lot of the promotional material talked about it as being like a sort of landmark artistic achievement in terms of the erotic space or like the sex film space, and I would agree with that. I think Sam Deegan said that it was the best hardcore film ever made. It's certainly one of my favorites that I've seen. Like, I wouldn't dispute that characterization. Oh, it was compared to Fellini. That's for you, Chris. So you should go ahead and get this too, host of this podcast. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, there's really nothing quite like it. And it is so bizarre and so disturbing and so depraved. And there's also sexy parts in it, but like, you know, he said explicitly that he made this to kind of antagonize the type of audience member that would go see something like this, and I think he succeeded, because I can't imagine anybody sitting down like wanting to jerk off to this and feeling like they got their money's worth. Like, I mean, sure, there's some parts, I mean, maybe you will if you're just, you know what, back in the day you had to take what you could get, right? But like this is clearly more of an artistic achievement rather than a sort of prurient or erotic one. The context surrounding the film is so interesting, and there's so much to get into. I'm like, I want to talk more about the film itself, but I don't want to spoil it, you know? Like, there's so much crazy shit that happens here that it's best experienced blind, I think. Oh, there was like an endoscopic shot of sorts. There is an extended hell sequence at the end. There is just truly insane shit going on in here, and I don't know if you can tell I'm gushing a bit. I really loved it, but it's just not for everybody. There's going to be heavy trigger warnings, and there's going to be heavy caveats. I subjected one of my normie friends to this, and they were less than enthused about it, so there's that. Okay, let's just go into the supplements. Okay, so there's 2 audio commentary options. One is like a new audio commentary. Okay, so Ashley West from the Rialto Report is just all over this release. I'm kind of shocked that this is like the first time that Vinegar Syndrome and Ashley West and the Rialto Report have like collaborated, because it's like a perfect match. And I think he's going to be doing a lot of this stuff going forward, which makes a lot of sense, because like if you've listened to the Rialto Report, which you should if you haven't, it is like genuinely a perfect podcast and like professional, like documentary level journalism and historical analysis going on. And so it's great to see him taking a very sort of active approach with this stuff. But he does a new audio commentary with the director, but also the episode that he did with Jonas Middleton is another option for the audio track. And since the podcast is only an hour long, it does just kind of stop an hour into it and the last 30 minutes are silent. I was kind of wondering how they were going to do that, but that option makes sense to me, because the alternative is just to create an hour-long video file of something of sorts, and that's taking up unnecessary space. So that makes sense to me. The podcast episode, it is available just on the regular Rialto Report feed. I would recommend listening to that, even if you don't buy this release. It's a great episode. You'll learn a lot, and, maybe it'll get you into the podcast if you've never listened to it before. But really, okay, so what I want to go ahead and talk about, I feel like I'm spoiling something here too, but this is just so fascinating. It's not spoiling the film, but the director was raised in a very conservative Baptist church in New Orleans, I think, or Georgia. Deep South shit, And that's not necessarily surprising in and of itself when you see the film. What's surprising is that he maintained that faith through the making of all his pornographic films, and even to this day. And he kind of says, look, I'm going to be upfront with you. Like, I justified this in my head at the time. Like, I was doing this to get a career going, and this was kind of what I felt I had to do. I was, I was putting in messages here to warn people away from this lifestyle, but, I'm not sure that I'd do this today, because I think I was part of the problem. There's even a disclaimer / warning at the end of the booklet where he writes a message to the reader and to the audience like, hey, I made this film to dissuade people from this lifestyle. I hope you take that away from this. There's an interview with him on this that Ashley West conducted, apparently back in 2006, but it looks very contemporary, probably because Elijah Drenner, editor, filmmaker, documentarian extraordinaire over at VS, cut together the video for it, so it looks pretty contemporary and pretty fresh. But in that one, he gets into his kind of current sort of views, and it's unfortunate, that fundamentalist upbringing definitely latched its hooks in there good, and he's kind of just has dog shit politics now. He's talking about how a woman's place is in the home, and men are weak-willed and need a woman to keep them in line, and men just want sex, and as long as a woman can provide sex and a good meal, she's a good wife. It's just ugh, I don't know. He can play the part of a conservative family man or whatever, a traditional values type of guy, but look, there are certain themes running through his work. I'm pretty sure this dude's a freak and is just kind of repressing it. And I mean, you know what? Do what you gotta do. Apparently he has a wife and a kid and he's happy. More power to you, I guess. What else? Okay, so there's the sequence at the end, but without all the filters applied. It's just kind of a raw scan to kind of show a point of comparison, which is interesting. It's a quick locations featurette. There's a theatrical trailer for both of the films included, and one of the things that I found intensely uncomfortable, the trailer for Through the Looking Glass is pretty good. It definitely sells the film. I was watching it and I was like, I mean, if I had seen this trailer back in the day, my ass would be seated. You know what I'm saying? This looks dope as fuck. And then at the end, it says something like, scenes shot with a 14-year-old girl or something. It says that explicitly, and it's so gross. Okay, so there is a 14-year-old girl in the movie. She's not in any of the explicit scenes. And she was actually sort of cast, or I guess put in contact with the director by her mother, who wanted her to be in movies and stuff. And they took great care, apparently, to make sure she wasn't around any X-rated material or anything like that, but she is in the movie. And it is a little uncomfortable in and of itself, but to then put that in the promotional material is pretty gross. It's the implication is that you're gonna watch, child sex abuse in a movie, and that's pretty fucked up. But that's its own thing, I guess. Okay, Cherry Blossom from 1972. This one is not even on Letterboxd yet, but I'm going to add it as soon as I'm finished recording. But it's his first feature film. It's about a young girl who has sex with her aunt and then a bunch of other people. That's kind of it. So more entries into the ICU. It's a consistent theme is all I'm saying. Don't know what's going on there, bud. This movie's terrible. It's fucking awful. It is excruciating. It is truly an endurance test. One last thing I'll say about it, and then I think I'm done with the segment. Oh, real quick. There's a booklet in here with an essay from Ashley West. And actually, I think if you pick one thing to engage with, other than the podcast, which I think you should listen to regardless, read this essay. It's excellent. It really consolidates all the information and all the other sources into one place. The one thing I will note is that I'm not sure who edited this booklet, but it needed a second pass. There were some pretty egregious typos, and clearly like a few sentences didn't make sense, and I'm pretty sure that they were just that there were mistakes that needed to be corrected. This is going to drive me crazy. If somebody knows what I'm talking about and can help me understand something, there's a sentence in there that has just like, it looks like he kind of mashed the keyboard at the end, and I was like Googling that word to see if I'm missing something, and like I think it's just an egregious typo or something. I don't know what's going on there. Maybe I'm just missing something. Anyway, the essay is great. You should check it out. Oh, Cherry Blossom. One other thing that I'll complain about is that there's no subtitles for Cherry Blossom. It's fine that Vinegar Syndrome has stopped subtitling all their special features. It makes my job harder, but I understand where they're coming from. But if you're going to do a feature film on there, you should subtitle it. That's my little 2 cents there. Cherry Blossom. You know, it's his first foray into filmmaking, into feature filmmaking anyway. Apparently he did a short film that he owns the rights to. I don't know why it's not on here. His second feature is not on here either. I'm guessing there's going to be a follow-up release with that and the shorts included. That would be great. But Cherry Blossom. Okay. This fucking thing has the worst dubbing I've ever seen in any film I've ever seen in my life. Like, it's not even close. They're not even trying. They're not even attempting to try. They'll be fully like somebody is eating pussy and like has full lines of dialogue, or like sucking dick and there's full lines of dialogue, or making out with someone and there's full lines of dialogue, or it'll be right on this person's face and their mouth is clearly not moving at all, but there it is, dialogue running as if a fucking person is speaking. That's annoying. But what's even more egregious to me is that like several times somebody will speak and the line that they're speaking will come several seconds before or after. It's like, just match it. You did the thing. It's fine. Like, they clearly did not have a script, and they were like, fucking go hard, do whatever, fuck each other, we'll figure it out in post. And then I'm not even convinced there was a script for the person in the dialogue booth, but whatever. They went off, did their thing. It's terrible. Just like, if you're not gonna just don't do it. Just don't do it. Just do it right. Write the script in the first place, or just don't have dialogue. You don't need it. It's fine. Okay, because it's like mostly during the sex scenes that there's just like talking on top of it, and like you can maybe get away with like an inner dialogue kind of thing, but that's clearly not what's happening because they're communicating. I don't know. It really bothered me. One last thing I'll say about it, and then I think I'm gonna wrap up the segment for today. You know, at a certain point when I was watching this, I told my friend I was watching it with, I was like, I feel like this is like the closest thing we could get to if like aliens tried to create a pornographic film. Like, it's so bizarre. It doesn't work. It's like someone imitating what sexuality might look like. And then I was like, you know what? Fundamentalist conservative Christian is about the closest you can get to an alien trying to make porn. So, okay, I'll leave it at that. The release is excellent. Buy it. Check it out. It's an important film, I think. It's a really transgressive, fascinating one, especially given the context in which it was created. It was funded by a church. That's fucking crazy, right? All of his films were funded by like rich yuppies who go to a church in New York. Crazy shit. Different world we're living in, let me tell you. That's it. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want more stuff like this. Support me on Patreon if you want. It is appreciated. I'm going to hand it back over to our boy Chris. And until then, remember that the wages of sin are fear and death. Praise God.
Okay. Well, we did it, y'all. Episode 8 in the books. Can't wait on December 1st, or right around the 1st of December. We'll have Heather Drain on. She's going to talk about a lot of different things, including a lot of the releases she's on, and whatever is on Partner Month that gets announced. So I can't wait. Right now we know there's 21 titles coming out, so it's going to be a busy day. And Heather's the best, so I can't wait to get that episode recorded and get it up to y'all within, the first couple days of the month. All right. Thanks, y'all. See ya around.
Thank you for listening. To hear more shows from the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network, please select the link in the description.
If you're looking for more horror outside of the mainstream, look no further than Unsung Horrors, a podcast about underseen horror movies. I'm Lance.
And I'm Erica. Every other week, we'll cover a horror movie with fewer than 1,000 views on Letterboxd. We'll even give you double feature recommendations to pair with the movies we discuss.
From gothic to shot on video, from slashers to comedies, from giallo to J-horror, we'll cover all the subgenres. So join us as we unearth these hidden gems of horror.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Unsung Horrors, available wherever you listen to podcasts. And part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Hello, my name is Kevin Tudor, and I'm one of the 3 hosts of Almost Major, a film podcast dissecting many major indie studios and the films they release. Every week, myself, Charlie Nash, and Bryden Doyle discuss overlooked, forgotten, or bona fide classic indie films via studio-specific miniseries. We've previously covered numerous films from Artisan Entertainment, Lionsgate Films, and New Line Cinema. Titles including The Blair Witch Project, American Psycho, Dogville, But I'm a Cheerleader, Saw, Requiem for a Dream, and Ringmaster, you know, the Jerry Springer film. Anyways, we have a fun time every week and we hope you will join us. Subscribe to Almost Major wherever you get your podcasts. Now proudly a part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.